March 9th, we had our first Coach Connect for those of us who are coaches with Barnabas Ministries, John 17:23 pastoral support groups. We recorded it in case you missed it, and we hope to see you at the next one. Looking forward. Well, I want to share a little bit of my sense of why we're doing this, and it's in part to get a little bit of a sense of community. Now I'm looking out. There's a couple of us are coaching, a couple of us are serving Barnabas. We're all on that team, but the sense that my hope is for coaches, and my understanding there's new ones coming all the time. That, and I'm a coach. That we have a chance to feel like, hey, I'm part of something bigger. There are people doing this in other parts of the country and even other parts of the world, and it. And by seeing faces, for me, it's so great because I know there are other people coaching, but I still sometimes feel like I just know my own little experience. So it's to get a sense of community. It's that we can encourage and learn from each other. So the coming together is we're kind of co-learners and we're all teachers. We're kind of we all of us have both roles, and so I was telling Rob and Dave, we were on early. I said my assumption is anybody who's a coach in Barnabas is already pretty awesome, and has something for us to learn from. So that's the goal, feeling a sense of community and a sense to be encouraged and to learn from each other. That's the plan for tonight. And the hope is to maybe do this, maybe something like twice a year, but because it's for you, for our coaches, we'll definitely be taking feedback and flex. And as people have ideas, about how often we do it and what we do, nothing's set in stone. This is just an experiment. And so we're going to be working on that.
Well, welcome. We're glad that you're here. I am going to take about 10 minutes and I'm going to share a little bit of my story, and then a coaching challenge and a technique, and then we're going to spend about 5 minutes discussing and reflecting on that technique. So
I have been a coach, I don't know, for I don't know, a year or 2 years, I don't know, something like that. Take your pick with Barnabas. And so most of the time, coaching experiences are basic, simple, baseline stuff. You text them, you email them, you call them based on their delivery preference. And I think that's important to do a needs analysis when you first interact with someone. Some people prefer one over the other. And so I try to be flexible in my delivery based on what they want. I try to be accommodating. And, most of the time you're providing prayer for this person. I tend to shoot those prayer requests off unless it's really some kind of personal nature, deeply personal nature. I send those prayer requests off to the prayer outpost. So I pray for them, in the moment, and then I shuffle those prayers off to the outpost so they can be prayed for there as well. Baseline coaching stuff is just listening. Sometimes if you just listen long enough, the person will process the problem out loud themselves and they'll kind of arrive at what they need to get to. And just listening lets them know that Barnabas is bigger than just them, and lets them know that just in the act of listening makes them feel important and makes them feel like there is someone out there, that believes that they count. And checking in, I I check in. I try to start checking in 4 weeks after the last check-in. So what usually happens is I'll send an email or a text 4 weeks after the last communication. And then sometimes it takes a week or a few days or whatever for them to get back to me. Then maybe I send something back to them. So it's not on a monthly basis or really even on a 6 weeks basis. But after the last after that back and forth conversation is done, then on my calendar, I set an appointment with myself for 4 weeks later. So it's kind of this rolling kind of schedule, but that serves a source of accountability, even if that's subconscious accountability for the leader. They know that someone is just going to say, hey, how's it going, and they have to give an answer. They have to say something. And I think it provides a sense of safety. So this idea, most of the time they don't really need us, right? So most of the time this is subconscious supporting, praying, accountability. But if the time comes that something does go awry, there's this feeling of safety that where you got someone, that you can call. The trickiest part of coaching is when the leaders and or the group members are not honest with you. And you can't do anything about that, right? You kind of have that spidey tingling sense like, I think they're holding something back. I don't think this is the real thing. All you can do is issue the invitation and keep issuing the invitation. But at the end of the day, if they're not going to be completely honest with you, there's not much you can do about that. But those situations, just like in a group, right? If a group isn't completely honest with each other, it's not going to be fruitful and healthy. And the same is true with a coaching situation. But to try to get to the root or the truth of an issue, I do want to talk about something called the 5 ways technique. And I'm going to share my screen with you. And we're just going to nod your head. Can everybody see that? All right. So we're going to talk about the 5 ways technique. It's really, it's not rocket science. But it is helpful. It's a helpful go-to to try to get to the root of something, because it is easy to get caught up in symptoms or sometimes even kind of false problems that really aren't the true problem. So the 5 ways techniques says each answer forms the basis of the next question. So you start with the original issue or problem, and then you move on asking your 5 whys. There's no like hard or fast. Oh, yeah.
I'm just gonna jump in. And how about so we don't have to take notes furiously, will you maybe share this later and I can pass it on to folks?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And thank you for asking that, Travis. So
Thank you.
the method is not hard and fast. Sometimes you can get to the root in 3 whys. Sometimes it takes 6, right? So the 5 whys is just kind of this handy little, it fits on your hand kind of thing. And the goal is to distinguish causes from symptoms. So, okay, if I keep asking why, when do you stop? How do you know? When you get to a broken process or an alterable behavior, now you have something that you can target. Now you have something that you can build goals around. Now you have something that you can create an action plan around. So, for example, let's just do a generic one, right? Issue, the battery is dead. Well, why is that? The alternator is not functioning. Why is that? The alternator belt is broken. Why is that? The alternator belt was well beyond its useful service life and it was not replaced. Oh, why was that? The vehicle was not maintained according to the recommended service schedule. And now you have the root of the problem. Now you have an alterable behavior, something that you can generate an action plan and goals around. So let's take this idea and let's apply it to a John 17 group. So Travis, I'm going to ask you to help me out here. So Travis, in your group, your issue is that there's no time to pray at the end. You just don't, you don't know. You get to the end and everyone's got to go. There's no time to pray. So if you'll read those first little comments on the left, and then I'm going to talk back to you with these questions.
Sure thing. Well, we run out of time, and then people have to leave. They've got other things they have to do.
Well, prayer's super important. Why do you think you're running out of time?
I don't know. We're covering everything else. It's fine. It's just prayer that's the problem.
why is prayer the problem? I wonder, does it have something to do with the beginning? You're having trouble at the end. Is it possible it has something to do with the beginning?
Well, maybe. I don't know. I don't think we're taking too long updating. Everyone seems to be fine with how we're doing that.
Yeah. Why do you think you're having this issue at the end? Could it have something to do with the beginning?
Well, actually, we often don't start on time.
Ah. Okay. So, it's okay to ask some of the same questions twice, because sometimes you have to ask it twice. So I don't want you to feel like, oh my gosh, I have to create this brand new generated question every time. Sometimes you just repeat the question.
So we started out with the issue of, okay, well, we've got no time for prayer at the end. And so they thought somehow that prayer was the problem. Well, right, prayer is not the problem. The problem, as we found out through the 5 whys, is we're not starting on time. So because we're not starting on time, now we get to the end and there's no time left. So the next thing that we would want to look at is, okay, as a group, let's think about, now from the leader, you've gotten to the root of the problem, we think, right? The issue is we're not starting on time. So now if we follow our 5 whys, and we can discuss this in our last few minutes. So if you've had this conversation with your leader and the leader is like, oh, yeah, we're not starting on time. So, right, so now you have a new issue and you're going to start these 5 whys again. So what are some possible answers that you might get from someone?
There's somebody who always shows up late.
Someone that shows up late. Okay. So if someone says, oh yeah, we don't start on time because we have someone that's showing up late, what is something you might say to encourage or to troubleshoot with this leader?
Does it have to be a why question?
Well, it's helpful if it's a why question. Like, okay, let's
So you just say, why aren't they showing up on time?
Right. And
right.
So that's right. Yeah. So yeah, Travis, why do you think this person is showing up late? Because maybe they've given a reason or excuse or whatever. So we can start with there. So why do you think this person's showing up late? What's an answer you might get?
They have to get their kid off to the bus for school in the morning.
Okay. So why do you think that the bus issue is causing the friction with the group then?
Okay, as a coach at this point, I just want to give them the solution because it's really clear to me.
Maybe the time of the meeting doesn't work that well for that individual.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So there's one troubleshoot, right? Hey, if the issue of this bus drop off and the meeting, if this is rubbing up against each other, maybe a troubleshoot is just to alter the time. So maybe that would be a logistical solution, right? Let's just alter the time. So what might another answer be to the question, why do you think this bus dropping off is rubbing up against the meeting starting? Why do you think that might be happening for this person? Oh, David, you're muted.
Has it been consistent, or is this a new problem? Maybe if it's a new problem, we might be touching on areas that they don't want to broach.
Good, yeah. So it could be logistical. Let's change the time, and it could be behavioral in that it's like, ooh, maybe this person is having some new issues. They're internally delaying getting to the group because part of them may be dreading it a little bit, or maybe they're having internal issues at home they weren't dropping their kid off at the bus. This is a new task they've taken on because something's brewing at home, right? So in which case, getting to the root of that with that particular member, this isn't a logistical fix. This is a deeper behavioral problem where the leader would need to have a conversation with that member to say, hey, we see this new pattern. Can we talk about this? What do you think is happening? Is there a way we can support you or help you as a member getting here on time? Because when we wait for you, we get to the end and there's no prayer, right? So when we're coaching leaders to talk to group members, it's always important to explain the why, right? So if a group leader is like, dude, you're showing up late. What's up with that? Stop it. So it's like, oh, I don't know. That may not be received well. But if we're like, oh, we're starting late, we're not getting to prayer. Prayer is really important to us. You're showing up late now. How can we help you show up on time? Because we really want to get to prayer. Right. And so that way it feels to the person like they're not the problem that's being solved. The problem that's being solved is getting to prayer, because no one wants to feel like a problem that has to be solved. So if this is a new behavior, that's a great insight, David. Maybe something has changed internally. What if this keeps happening? What if this is like, oh, I want to strangle this person, they're late again? What are some things we could ask? And then we'll hand off to David.
Tell me about your covenant.
Yeah. I'd wonder if they had one. Or when was the last time it was reviewed and refreshed?
Yeah.
Review it.
Yeah. So you would ask the leader, oh, so-and-so has never been on time. Wow. Have you shared your covenant with them? Oh, you don't have a covenant. Do you need a template for a covenant? Right. So again, that's more of a logistical issue where maybe they didn't know this was a big deal commitment, right? So once the covenant issue is addressed, then if it still happens, you can move on to the behavioral issues. But the 5 whys help us get from the symptom, we can't get to prayer, and then we think prayer is the problem, and then it moves us into a deeper issue and to try to get into an actual solve and an actual plan for the person. So those are some of the ways and techniques that I coach. So thanks, Travis, for asking me to share. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Elisa, very much. Yeah.
Can I make a comment about Elisa, your 5 whys? First of all, I've studied root cause problem solving, and that is probably the most used tool and the most effective tool out there for root cause problem solving. And the reason why I'm so passionate about what you just said is that so many of us, me included, tend to solve symptoms and we don't solve problems. So that means the problem's still there. It just changes its shape and we end up solving it again. It's like kicking the can down the road. We never pick it up. We just keep kicking it down. There's a lot of effort goes into kicking it down the road. So just taking the time to do what Elisa said and just think about it, reflect, and try to figure out what the cause is before we start jumping to solutions. So valuable.
That sounds
thank you
good.
for
And so
sharing.
I want to ask both of you guys, so would solving the symptom and not the problem be, oh, let's change the time, but you didn't discern that person, maybe it was an internal thing, they weren't wanting to get there, something else is keeping them, and you might solve a solution of switching a time, but then, oh wait, the person's still late. Would
Yep.
that be a case of not having gotten to the cause?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, the original issue was, we run out of time and we don't get prayer in. And so if you're trying to treat that as a symptom, then you might start trying to do things like, well, you need a timekeeper, or you're updating too long. Well, you don't know that any of those things are necessarily true, because it's not actually the time flow that's the problem. they're keeping their blocks of time well, but they're starting everything late. So when you push everything late and people are like, hey, I gotta go, I got another meeting, it feels like the prayer is the problem, but the problem started way up here.
Yeah, I would just say too that, like in a faith group that I lead, I made the mistake of saying, well, prayer is really important. It's always at the end. I'm moving it to the beginning. We're going to get to prayer, right? Well, that was solving the symptom. I put a Band-Aid on it because we got to prayer, but now something else got dropped off. The root cause had nothing to do with what was at the end. The root cause was something like what David said. There was an issue with someone getting to the meeting because of some underlying issue. And by me making a solution or choosing a solution, it didn't solve the problem at all. It just moved it. So 5 whys, really important.
Thank you so much for what was shared there. Before we break, are there any comments or questions people would like to give? We can take 5 more minutes just to, if you have something you want to share or something you heard tonight or a question you have.
Just some of you may know Steve Mazurski, and Steve has asked me to coach a fellow who's going to start another group here in Springfield. So that'll be my first attempt at coaching.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. It's I'm so glad we're doing this. Historically, we found that groups need to be touched on a regular basis. Someone has to touch the group. And if groups are touched, they continue to be healthy. If they don't get touched, they get neglected and they eventually decay into something else. And so even that one call, that text, is an investment in the kingdom that multiplies, because as the group meets, then the members hear all the benefits that we heard about earlier. Their congregations benefit, of the congregations benefit, the community benefits. So there's this enormous cascade effect from a simple conversation, a simple question, a set of 5 whys, or just a, hey, how you doing? How can I pray for your day? All of these little things are so simple, but they have a marvelous effect. So I'm so grateful to all of you for participating in this. And Travis, Elisa, Dave, for hosting this is fabulous. Thank you.
We have put Travis's email in the chat. So if you haven't opened up the chat, his email was sent to everyone. That way you don't have to look it up, and you can copy it from the chat before we end the meeting tonight, and send him those your thoughts as he asked, your input, because we want to really meet your needs. This is about you. It's not about what we think you need. We want to hear what you need.
Yes. Thank you.
Amen. Amen. Thank you.